Alright guys, this is DeagleBeagle. This is me covering Series 3. Yeah, it says right here, Series 3, because it is March 1st, 2020 today. And some of this stuff, I don't update it all the time, like, the usage stats and stuff, but I figure people can just click the link that says smogon.com/stats and hopefully figure it out, or Peakalytics or whatever, and use that. Okay, so it's just, you can get ideas off of this and stuff, but I don't really focus on that. I focus mostly on that top and high tier stuff, like this stuff, and some of the team building stuff. I'll walk it through it right now. So this is my blog, DeagleBeagle.blogspot.com, and some of these guidelines have been up here for a while, actually. Like sleep counter, that's been there like pretty much the whole season, because you need to counter sleep like every year. And I used Lumberry, Scrafty plus a grass type like Rotamo on my Dallas team just for sleep. And then speed control, I think, is very important. The reason why I kind of lost battles that I've lost recently, or at Dallas or whatever, is because the speed control really is once you lose that, it's like the game's pretty much almost over. It's really hard to come back when you lose the speed control unless they don't have enough offense with it and coverage and stuff, and you can kind of reverse it somehow or stall it out or whatever. So I kind of recommend bulky Pokemon. I wouldn't necessarily recommend stuff like Inteleon anymore because it looks good on paper, but when you actually use it just a ton, I think you realize that the stuff that walls it can kind of just kill it and ruin its Dynamax, or just in general just kill it too easily before it stalls them or gets off enough attacks. So you don't necessarily need a prison trick room. You do need some sort of trick room counter though, like Roar, Dragon Tail, whatever, whatever your counter to trick room is. Maybe you just stall it out because your team's really bulky, I don't know, but you need some kind of counter to trick room. I don't care what people say. Solar Power G-Max Zard counter, it's just really powerful, and I faced it recently in Series 3, even though I think you could use it before then in the IC or whatever. But anyways, there's not a lot of things that counter Charizard in general consistently. Tyranitar maybe, Rhyperior maybe, Haxorus or Thick Fat Lax maybe, I meant to put Rotom H on here too, and Tyranitar, so I'll have to do that. But they can just use redirection or whatever, I don't know. But at least you have something. And manual rain could include something like Sableye. Optional, Intimidate, Fake Out, Weather, Mon that benefits from weather, like Excadrill. Terrain. Terrain would be like Misty Surge or Electric Surge. That's not really that good in general because you would have to use Weezing or like Pincursion or whatever. Follow Me is good on a lot of teams. It depends on the team. Optional, Intimidate counter like Competitive or Defiant. So some of the stuff I just put up here, like the G-Max Zard counter, the Aurora Veil counter stuff, because there's going to be a lot of people using Lapras, and there's going to be a lot of people using Incineroar. So and it also has Parting Shot, and that's just not just Intimidate. So I think you might want to use a Pokemon that counters stat spamming reduction Pokemon like that, because if you don't, they'll just reduce all your stats and kind of shut you down. So I imagine a lot of the good players are going to use something like Melodic or Passimian or Braviary or whatever. I wouldn't focus too much on the definition of tiers. Just know that if a Pokemon's top tier, it's a Pokemon that I seriously am considering putting on a team. If it's high tier, maybe in the future I might move it up a tier, or even top tier. I might move it down to high tier or back and forth sometimes, depending on the metagame or different changing opinions or changing metagame. Some things that used to be high tier aren't now. But first, let's cover this, going in order from top to bottom. Tiers, unsure. So this is a section of stuff. It's like my laundry list of stuff to test. Stuff that I just saw at that tournament, Erie Pulse Raichu or Torracat or Venusaur, kind of the newer stuff. Some of the older stuff too, because it is a new generation and they're not in the top tier category anymore, and I think they might be top tier. So I want to test out all the defiant and competitive Pokemon. Venusaur, maybe I kind of underestimated it because it is in high tier for now, but that's not to say that it should stay in high tier. I'm not sure that it's top tier yet because it seems like it's just like a better Vileplume, like 10% better than Vileplume, but Vileplume's not top tier either. So, I mean, the only difference between it and Vileplume seems to be its base stat total and maybe having Frenzy Plant. That's about it, as far as I know. And maybe it's a little faster or whatever. But that's part of its stats. Anyways, Life Orb Seismitoad. I have been using specs with it before. I use Life Orb sometimes also. But I need to try it out. I don't think I tried it out enough with Life Orb Special. When I had it special, it was usually specs, and usually it was Life Orb if it was mixed or just pure physical, like with Earthquake and stuff to test it. And I kind of like the special one better, not just because of Intimidate, but just you kind of have to use something stupid like Stomping Tantrum or Earthquake, and I don't know. I think Max Quake just hits stuff harder, like Duraludon or whatever too. So Life Purd. That was shown to be pretty good. Justin Karras used it. Wolfie Glick used it. Good with Copycat. I already knew that's why he was using it. It's so obvious with Max Guard, like Reuniclus. And it's basically as Fake Out. So there's a lot of these prankster Pokemon like Grimmsnarl, Whimsicott, or what are the other ones? Meowstick or Lightbird, I think. Oh yeah, and Sableye. So I think that's like 4 or 5, probably 5 prankster users, and some of them came out very recently. Lightbird might be one of the better ones though, because it has fake tears. I guess you could say a lot, like pretty much all of them have fake tears, I think. But it has a fast fall play. It has Copycat. Maybe Copycat's its main niche. And people not knowing exactly what it does. Well, now they probably know because Wolfie Glick used it. But anyways, it's worth a try. Worth trying out. Phantom Force Mimikyu. I haven't really used Phantom Force with Mimikyu. I've pretty much always used Shadow Claw, but it does have more power and goes through Protect and stuff, so maybe it's worth a try. I've been wanting to try out Mimikyu. Mimikyu might be really good now because people are going to use Brick Break more, and you might be able to use it somehow with Lapras or something. And then the top tier. So some of these changed recently. Abomasnow didn't used to be in the top tier section, but I think from using it a lot recently, and even before, I thought it was kind of top tier. Maybe, but I wasn't sure because the main team I used on was with Inteleon, and I was doing really well. But I didn't really, for some reason, test it very much outside of that. And then, well, it could be really good in Series 3 too, because it does a lot of spread damage with Blizzard, and Hail's just really good for finishing off Sash Excadrill, or just residual damage. I think it's really underrated. I mean, it has a dual stab to an underspeed star to counter it, so it has that niche over Vanillix. I might have to test out Vanillix again though, because in some ways it's better than Abomasnow, but I think I like Abomasnow's dual stab and lower speed. and stuff. Okay, and then Arcanine. It's a great Intimidate spammer, but nothing new. I'm not going to really cover the old stuff on here very much, just the new stuff. Solar Power Gmax Zard, like I said, is worth testing. I don't think that's clear up here yet, but I'll fix it. Conkeldurr, with all the Sylveon, Conkeldurr's probably gonna go down in how good it is, but you can definitely just try to counter Sylveon more with your allies. Like my friend used Bronzong with it. I helped him make the team, and he liked it because I made Bronzong on the team to specifically counter that Sylveon problem. But Bronzong probably isn't as high tier as something like Duraludon or whatever. So maybe you could use that instead, or Durant or whatever. Okay, so Durant proved to be really good in the Collinsville tournament, and even Internats it got second. So it's really fast and it has good Dynamax moves. I mean, lowering their stuff or increasing your team's stats are just really good. Excadrill's really good with its max moves. Gastrodon didn't used to be high tier or top tier, but I mean, I figured I'll just make it top tier because there's a good chance I might use it on the team just to counter water. It seems like for some reason Gastrodon's getting better over time, even though Dracovic is being used less just because it counters Max Geyser, and people are using Rotom W and stuff more in Inteleon now. So, I mean, they'll find some water Pokemon to use if it's not Dracovic. And then Indeedee's good for especially sand teams to stop that Mach Punch, but you could probably just use like Sylveon or whatever instead. I think Sylveon was really underrated until recently, till someone saw it in internets and stuff, and everyone's been using it. And then Incineroar, obviously, we know how good that is. I can't believe they gave it Parting Shot. That's just going to be used on almost every team. You know, Incineroar, Lapras is going to be used on a lot of teams, but especially Incineroar because you don't have to G-Max it for it to be good. You don't have to Dynamax it. You can just spam Fake Out, Parting Shot, and Intimidate, and just go in and out, in and out. So you better get a counter for that quick. And Jellicent, still good with Imprison or even without Imprison. Lapras, I think, is going to be really good with Aurora Veil. Not the move, but the Gmax Resonance, using it, setting it up, because it going through any weather seems to me like it's really broken. And you can either use Light Clay on it or Weakness Policy, depending on whatever floats your boat or your team. And then Mudsdale seems pretty good sometimes with either ability, Inner Focus or Stamina. Just bulky, hard to kill, and it just beats like sand and other stuff. Pelipper, its rain might be good versus something, maybe for countering Gmax, Charizard, or all these Torkoal teams, whatever. I don't know. I'm just going to leave it up there for now because it's like the only Drizzle Pokemon. And then Rotom H definitely is going to be good to counter Charizard and resist Torkoal and stuff. And then Rotom C probably won't be nearly as good as it used to be because of Charizard and Venusaur and stuff. I might have to move some of these Pokemon down, but until I know for sure they're not top tier anymore, I'm not moving stuff down. I'm not just going to guess and say that this Pokemon will probably not be top tier anymore. No, I'm leaving it where it's at unless I know there's a good reason to move it, because then this list wouldn't mean anything otherwise. And there's a lot of people that tell me that things should be changed on this, and I do listen to everybody, but I don't change everything, because if I did, it would be a list from beginners, no offense, but it wouldn't be a list that I know makes sense and isn't perfect, but is like 95% perfect. You know, there's slight changes or corrections to this, and I could even have a 5th tier or whatever, but I don't feel like separating it that much because I don't want to be too close-minded. I figure I'll just make one big pool of Pokemon I would likely use or have a lot of potential in general on teams and just put it in here. If it's high tier, there's a chance I might use it in the future on a very specific slot on a team or whatever, but just in general, I don't think these Pokemon are going to be that good anymore. So let me see if I can finish this top tier list up, and then I'll go to the high tier and other stuff. So, don't really need to say anything about the other Pokemon. So, high tier, now, that's not to say, for example, that Appleton is just as good as, what's a better Pokemon in the high tier category, Braviary or something. It's just saying that it's not bad enough for it to be like medium tier or something. So don't necessarily assume too much about this blog. But some things might be better now. Like I said, Haxorus earlier, or Snorlax with thick fat could counter these Sun teams. Goodra, I think Goodra, where's Goodra? Goodra has a big niche right now because it counters all these freaking Sun teams, and with the Salt Vest it's almost impossible for them to kill it. So some of these things may move up. Let me talk about the Pokemon that recently got moved down though. Basically almost anything that's weak to Lapras or Freeze Dry weak, or just too reliant on like Swift Swim for speed or whatever, I just moved down. Like and then Bravery, I also moved it down because it probably is top tier now because of Incineroar, but I need to test it again to be sure. But before, I just feel like it's good, but just the metagame shifted to where like everything counters Braviary, not because they're trying to counter it, but just all this Togekiss and Excadrill and Rotom and stuff, just too many counters for Braviary. It's really just a coincidence, and I think people found that weakness policy, Togekiss, or something else might be better for Max Airstream. You can just use a special Pokemon. You don't need Defiant necessarily. I just wanted to stop them, discourage them from countering my physical allies. But that's not always super necessary. Let's see who else I moved down. I mean, I moved Dragapult down a while ago just because it seems like you pretty much need Togekiss for it to be good, and I don't like that. I don't know, it's kind of predictable unless you use it in a weird way like with EVs or whatever. And what else? I guess it's not necessarily predictable if you use it like a weird one of that special or whatever, but I don't know if it would be that good in a best of 3. Okay, let's see who I moved down. Dusclops has the potential, but I just don't like being so weak to taunt. And Inteleon I moved down recently because it's so fragile. I think Hydreigon, I don't know why I saw so much at Collinsville when it just seems really easy to kill because it has so many weaknesses, and being 4 times weak to Fairy is just bad, to me, in my opinion. I don't know how it survived like Max Starfall or whatever. Okay. This is regular Lapras, by the way, not G-Max Lapras. So maybe you should just remove that so it doesn't create confusion. Things that are freeze dry weak are very likely to be high instead of top tier because I don't think I would use like Gastrodon, Gyarados, Ludicolo, Seismitoad, and etc. Now that Lapras might be on a lot of teams, it's just like, why take the risk? And you're probably not going to be offensive enough to like kill them anyways. And then a lot of these things might move up, like I said. Melodic, Passimian, etc. Could move up. some things like Rhyperior probably will get worse with Lapras and stuff. Basically, the way I see it is anything that's weak to the new stuff is probably going to be worse. Oh, Venusaur, it might be top tier instead of high tier. I'll have to test it, but I know for sure Venusaur is better than Vileplume. You just can easily see that it has better stats and stuff, and it's pretty much like a better Vileplume. Some of these Pokemon, most of these Pokemon should stay in high tier, but some of them might move up. So the Pokemon that, the main 3 Pokemon that I think 3 or 4, I should say like around 4 or maybe 5 Pokemon that will be used a lot more are basically everything in the unsure list. So I think Ninetales might be used a lot more now because of Charizard. Torkoal's going to be used more. Venusaur is going to be used. Passimian, Braviary, Melodic might be used more to counter Incineroar. Some people might use Torracat. I think it gets more speed and it's pure fire, whatever. I gotta see about that. I'm not sure about Torracat, but I think it does get the same moves that Incineroar does, and it might have a very slight niche. I don't know if it's worth it though, because I think it's pure fire, so it doesn't get a dark stab. So I don't think I'd personally use it unless it has something really special. I think the main difference is its speed, but I could be wrong. I'll have to check its moveset and stuff. And then, what else? Oh, Liepard. People might use that. You already know what it does. If you don't, just look at Wolfie Glick. Used it at Collinsville or Justin Karras. What else are people going to use more besides Wolfie's team and that Andrew Dean guy who just won Collinsville? People are going to use Charizard a lot with solar power. People are going to, and that's really powerful. People are going to use, besides Torkoal, they're going to use stuff to counter, Charizard, like the stuff I listed, Tyranitar or whatever, Snorlax, and they're going to use Venusaur. They're going to use Lapras. There's basically just 5, I think around 5 Pokemon that got a lot better or recently got released recently. So I would really watch out for those. Things that counter those and things that are weak to those. It's going to influence a lot of the metagame. In fact, I think a lot of this list will be gone in the top tier list, and it'll be moved down to high tier, and then some of the high tier stuff will become top tier. So it'll probably change like 5 to 10 of these Pokemon somehow, or add to it or whatever. I'll have to really see. So, one last thing I think before I wrap this up. It's going to be a lot more relevant now to use, what was I going to say? Oh, to counter screens. So I listed a whole bunch of ideas how to counter screens, and the most ideal way to me would probably be like Arcanine with Psychic Fangs, which does hit, I think, pretty much every Pokemon except Dark types. So you should be able to likely break the screens instead of having to risk them switching in a Ghost type, or they could just switch in a Dark type, I suppose, to try to wall that. I'm trying to remember if Psychic Fangs is perfectly accurate too. Let's see really quick. Oh, I can't even chat. I'll just look it up. So while I'm looking that up, keep in mind there's other stuff like Brick Break and whatever that you can use to break. So it does have, yeah, that's what I thought. It had 100 accuracy. I just want to make sure because I haven't used it really in a long time. You can use, so 85 power, 100 accuracy for Psychic Fangs. So it's the same accuracy as Brick Break, and it's 10 more power. But Arcanine might be the most ideal with it. I don't really recommend Dracovish or Barraskewda or Mawile. Maybe on Dragapult, but I don't think it has room. So really just Arcanine. But Arcanine's weak to water from like Lapras or something. So maybe think about using Pasho Berry with it. Or Sun. Somehow Max Flare. I don't know. But if you use Max Flare, you can't Psychic Fangs. So maybe Max Flare with an ally. I don't know. Or set up Sun. You could set up Sun with like Torkoal or Ninetales with it. Then it's kind of repetitive though with the defensive and offensive typing. But anyways, Brick Break. These are just some of the Pokemon. These aren't all the good Brick Breakers. In fact, half of these Pokemon aren't even that good. But just look up what gets Brick Break, and there's probably like 200 Pokemon that get it or something, or 100, I don't know. Or maybe less. But I'm just saying there's a lot. So I don't think you should be saying like hardly anything gets Brick Break, because you can just slap it on almost anything. Sometimes Pokemon don't have room though. Like Scrafty already has Scrafty. It would be weird to run like 2 fighting moves on Scrafty. It's kind of redundant, right? But if you run like Brick Break on Tar, it kind of needs the fighting coverage anyways. So it wouldn't be that weird to run it on Tar. Like something where you don't need the 4th move that much, and it would add good coverage. Like it might be good on Snorlax or whatever too, or good on one of these other Pokemon like Rangaroo or Gothita or whatever, because they might try to activate weakness policy with it anyways, right? It might be good with like Darmanitan or whatever, but I'm not a big fan of that Pokemon. Okay, and then Defog. I say Defog is pretty much useless because you could just run Brick Break or Psychic Fangs or something better versus Screens than that, because I think it does like no damage, and it's more of a singles move, because it gets rid of like Stealth Rock and stuff and Screens, but I'm trying to remember if it gets rid of your own sides too. I just don't think it's a good move. And then Court Change, that probably won't be too useful. I did see someone using Pasho Berry Cinderace though, which is cool. But even if that does work, that would only work for like 1 game. They would just like not. I guess you could say it counters them if they can't G-Max Resonance until like late game or whatever, but they would probably just double up on the Cinderace, or it'd be a prediction war and not be. You couldn't consistently do it, and they all know it has Court Change, so I don't even think a smart person would G-Max Resonance, or might not even pick Lapras versus a Cinderace on your just seeing the team preview. And then G-Max Wind Rage, you could kind of use Corviknight for that. Except I don't think Corviknight's like a top tier Pokemon, but it does counter that, and you don't have to Dynamax if you don't want to, and just use the regular one, and only G-Max if like you have to, like if they got that Lapras. And then Screen Cleaner, you could use Mr. Rhyme or whatever for that, or Mr. Mime, but that's too obvious. All the obvious stuff I can just tell won't work, You need some random Brick Break that they won't expect, or they pretty much have to predict that you have Brick Break, or, there's no way for them to know for sure whether you have it or not. Like you'll catch them off guard with it. That's what you want, like Brick Break on Incineroar or whatever, where you could easily run a different move. So it's not obvious that you're just going to Brick Break their screen. So you kind of encourage them to set up screens and then just break it, because war is really all about deception, and all this other stuff's kind of old. I think Icy Wind and other stuff have been like really underrated until recently. People are using it in like internets and stuff and doing well now with speed changing moves like that, more max airstream and stuff, and all of this stuff is kind of old. I want to look at the medium tier and other stuff too much. I haven't really messed with that. I guess I'll have to take another look at it though, because the game is changing and stuff. In fact, I might have Liepard or whatever. Now, some Pokemon I didn't even test because I don't even think they were out. Or if they were out, there were like maybe 5 or 10 Pokemon I didn't test out because they just seemed so bad they weren't even worth testing. Okay, and some of this stuff, you should already know by now how Dynamax works and everything. And they did fix a lot of the glitches recently. So I'm not sure about all these glitches. They do say that the ally switch with stalwart thing has been fixed and stuff, but I just want to see it for myself, some of these things. I erased some of it because I know for sure they fixed it, but other stuff that I haven't personally witnessed them fixing it, I'm just going to leave it up here. So with that said, thank you for watching the video, and please share it.